What says, I look rich, but I don't have a dollar in the bank? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. People with great cars but cheap apartments. This was me, but I have plenty of money. It's just that cars and traveling are my hobbies. I don't need much space or amenities. My apartment was rent-controlled and not in a terrible place. And even as someone making over $150,000, I'd still be house poor here in Louisiana as a single homeowner. Not worth giving up the things I love just to own a house or live somewhere fancier, especially since I was constantly traveling and rarely home in the first place. Didn't move out of that apartment until my GF and I moved in together. Honestly, I could have comfortably lived in a van, but towing my car everywhere with me would have gotten old real quick. Even in our new place, I pretty much only use the game room unless she's home too, lol. Story 2. Mercedes, but rents an apartment in the ghetto part of town. You know, I live in a part of town that's known for all the drug deal going on. You can walk to the store 50 meters away and see at least 3 different dealers I live there because the apartments are the cheapest in the entire town. The real estate agent told me I just have to cope with the neighbors who often throw parties and the people that hang out on the stairs. My apartment is really nice too. Nothing too fancy, but just what I needed as I live alone. But people assume either I own some crazy expensive stuff, most expensive would be my gaming PC, or that I'm dirt poor while I'm just spending as less as possible. Story 3. The vast majority of people that live in really nice houses and drive expensive pickups SUVs. Most people are about a missed paycheck away from losing everything because they've stretched themselves so thin. Our house was in foreclosure. After moving in, we found out the neighbors were shocked about the house being sold. Furnace looked like it had been shot for years. It literally crumbled when the HVAC guys pulled it. They had been just using space heaters. Neighbors never guessed. Old owners apparently leased new Cadillac SUVs constantly and were always going on cruises. They just ran up credit cards and kept refinancing, then quit paying. Story 4. When I used to work at the place I was let go from, not my fault, there was an employee that made 17 CAD H, driving a Mercedes, not brand new. And he acted like he was all powerful, and above me, I was his boss. About 8 months later, everyone had enough of his bragging and just stopped talking to him. What they didn't see is this guy would constantly ask for his pay early because of his bills. Eventually, we terminated him for a lot of reasons, but it's just funny when you see something like this, but you know the real story behind it. Story 5. My neighbors have hinted at, how do we all live in that house together? We live in a 3-bedroom ranch with 3 kids. Oldest lives in a bedroom in the basement. It is nicer than my bedroom. I don't buy new cars. I don't give a crap about RVs or boats or golf carts. Neighbors don't know anything about me, and I secretly enjoy how they think their amazing cars and brand new toys are so impressive. My house is paid off. I own another house that is paying rent. We go on nice trips when we want. Life is too short to impress people that you don't even know. Story 6. A high-spec Jeep, or other very expensive version of a cheap car, Hellcat. When I was buying my fun car at a high-end used car dealer, they had a 993 Turbo and a GT40 among many other 250 Kelvin's cars in inventory when I was there. They were trying to sell a Jeep Trackhawk. They said they'd had at least 4 people willing to buy it and couldn't make financing work for them. They claimed it was the car they got the most interest in, but was the hardest to actually sell. It sold that day while I was hanging out killing time waiting for my flight home to somebody who traded in a lesser Grand Cherokee. Apparently there was a whole lot of rolling financing going on. Story 7. We've just bought a house from a senior lady that used to work in PR and marketing. She is a socialite and known in old money circles, the kind you read from in the social pages. She even worked briefly for one of Trump's enterprises. She resigned after the Hollywood tape stuff. Anyone would think she was some rich lady, but her house had only 1 working water heater out of 4 with very little water pressure. She had a bunch of bathrooms, but none had finished caulking and tile or even proper plumbing. All appliances were old and practically in non-working condition. And when we made closing, we had to make several checks to different people she owed money to. The lady seems to have been pretty much broke except for the house she presumably inherited, but couldn't afford to even maintain. Story 8. People who flaunt their wealth, whether it's a car, an expensive purse, a designer dog, whatever. The truly wealthy elite didn't get their wealth by spending it. and they often pinch every penny they can. They also don't talk or brag about the things they have. Expensive luxuries to them are as commonplace as microwaves or washing machines to us. Side note, I work for a very wealthy clientele and had a discussion with one of my clients about the food we ate growing up. We laughed about enjoying the same stuff, being from a similar culture. I asked if his mom was also a bad cook, and he looked surprised, admitting that his mom never cooked. They had personal chefs his whole life. Story 9. I used to fly a lot and got upgraded to first class often. You can always tell the first-timers, they're grabbing all the snacks and ordering one drink after another. Meanwhile, the old-timers of first class, who are just working schmoes who have to travel a lot and get upgraded for free, were asking for water and waving away the snacks. You can always tell the really rich people in first class. Often it's a whole family. They're wearing nicely tailored clothes with no labels on them. They have a certain comportment about them. And their haircuts are on another level. No designer labels are visible because rich people don't play that game. Story 10. Having worked for a billionaire, specifically an old money billionaire, and knew the quite well, I can say that there were pretty obvious differences between this guy and new money rich guys. The guy I worked for never tried to flash his wealth. He had nice cars, for instance, but nothing super exotic, no Ferraris or Lamborghinis. He dressed well, but again, well, not flash. He also treated everyone with respect, from his top biz associates to the janitors. And interestingly enough, the guy worked his bloody ass off. He was up at 5 a.m. and going until well into the evening. Meetings stacked, places to be, was very hands-on, made sure he had time for his kids and wife, etc. I see similar parallels in the ask question. People that are broke but want to create the illusion of wealth overdo it. Wearing clothes that are far beyond their means, usually counterfeits if you know what to look for. Driving cars beyond their means. Half their paychecks go to make the payments, either over tip, again to overcompensate and create the illusion, or just mean and degrading to service workers or anyone they are trying to be superior, to try and make themselves seem more important or wealthier. Story 11. Work with a good group of guys. One has a very nice 2018 Ram pickup. His wife picks him to and from work. They have 2 cars, but the other needs about $1,800 in work and has been sitting for 3 years. He says he can't save up the money. Wife is a part-time school lunch worker. He is a foreman that makes roughly $50K before taxes, spends 30 minus 50 a day in lottery tickets, buys 3 cans of dip and 2 Monster energy drinks every day. His entire fam, I lie, wife and kid, 19 minutes, live in a mill basement rent-free, still can't make ends meet. Another guy is finally going out to live on his own away from home for the first time. He's 30. Story 12. MLM, multi-level marketing. People who post pictures of themselves by a pool, the beach, or a calf, bragging about the money they're making and how they can go anywhere while you're stuck at a 9-5 job. What you don't see is that these ladies barely make any money shilling their overpriced products. They put everything on credit cards and they rake up huge debt. Sure, they may be at the pool or the beach, but what they don't tell you is that they're constantly on their phones trying to sell while everyone else is having fun. Story 13. I'll tell you a story. I was in the US Navy. I was stationed at a training base where we learned the ins and outs of our particular job. For a bit of an idea, people are frequently moved from room to room and from ships, barracks, to ship. Usually you are sharing a room with 2 or 3 people at a time. You can keep anything personal as long as it can all fit into your closet outside of liberty hours. And your closet better not look framed full. So buying a smaller TV is the sensible choice. Also, it is worth noting that you have to stay in the room you are assigned. Anyways, at one point I was moved to a new ship. Turns out I got a room with a guy who was a little odd. Turns out he was drug dealing and he got kicked out later on after leaving my room. But that's another story. He was friends with a piece of shit guy. Shocker, I know. This other guy, Guy B, was in a different room. His roommates couldn't stand him, and they basically kicked him out of their room without actually kicking him out of his room. He would come into our room and share the one-person bed with Guy A by sleeping ass to feet. While we eventually told Guy A he had to cut that shit out. It's what happened within the week of me getting there and them still doing that shit. At the time, the PS3 was relatively new. They pulled their money together and bought a PS, a big-ass TV, and a game. We didn't make much money. We all made enough that you could buy it if you were smart with your money, But then again, if you are smart with your money, you wouldn't buy that. Now for all you young people, when the PS3 came out, it was notorious for its high price. It was damaged near twice the price of consoles back then. So this is a long way to answer the question, and that answer is, the whole time they would be playing it, they would constantly, not exaggerating, tell each other back and forth, "This was such a good idea, bruh," and "I'm so glad we did this, brah," and the other person would agree. They were constantly trying to reassure each other about their terrible mistake because they were both broke. Story 14. My ex-husband grew up poor, and it gave him a horrible complex. It was so important for him to look rich, and we went so far in debt. He drove a Porsche. I had a 14-year-old car. Had to have designer clothes and got mad because I didn't have a closet of designer shoes and clothes myself. When I was pregnant with our daughter, I had saved around $10,000 to help pay bills so I wouldn't have to rush back to work after 6 weeks. Know what he did? He took a chunk of that money and bought an Omega Seamaster watch because he felt he deserved it. That should have been when I walked, but I stuck around another decade. He always tried to blag and upgrade on flights and of course had to pay for entry to airport lounges. He takes a lot of photos to share on social media, but it wasn't enough to post for the sake of gloating, no. He had to find fault and talk about how standards were slipping or that it was simply not good enough, whilst tagging the airline in hopes for compensation of some kind. I couldn't take it anymore. It was such an embarrassment, and I hated the debt and struggling to pay our bills to fund his faux rich lifestyle. Filed for divorce and wished I would have done it sooner. Story 15. I used to decide car loan applications and review portfolio performance. I remember one where a husband to wife with a memorable to me last name was applying for a new GMC Yukon Denali, $75 or $80,000 at the time. He had a good income, she was Sam. Nice address in a nice neighborhood. No money down, no savings balance, substantial credit card debt, chunky mortgage, an open BMW lease. We cut the request by requiring some money down. They don't end up getting the loan through the source I worked for. By chance, they pop up shortly thereafter on my Facebook feed, friend of a friend. Country club scene, she's dripping in jewelry. Kids are decked out in designer labels. Flash forward 5 years. I see another application for a used minivan, same name. It is them. Just out of BK, house foreclosed, BMW lease done, rental address. He has the same job. She now works too. They took down, included in the BK, over $100,000 in credit card debt and the loan on the Yukon they got from another lender. Now I have a deep subprime credit score. I give the application to a coworker because I know who they are and can't really decide blindly. He writes an approval at close to a 20% interest rate with money down required. We didn't get the loan that time either. All right, folks, that's a wrap. If you like more of this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.